This is Oft Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Oft Off Topic is...
Pete would be in San Francisco for 2 years, soaking up as much knowledge as he could off the Super Bowl winning coaches. And then he decided, hey, I can go get a job here with the New England Patriots because they were looking for a new head coach. The Patriot owner at the time was Robert Kraft, same owner as he is now. Do you remember, Nate? Robert Kraft got his Super Bowl ring stolen by Putin.
Sounds familiar.
Yep, literally, Putin was meeting with a bunch of people, and Robert Kraft was there, and Putin was like, "Hey, that's a cool ring. Can I look at it?" And Robert Kraft was like, "Sure, why not? What do you expect is going to happen? He's going to look at it and hand it back to you." Putin literally looks at it and just sticks it in his pocket and just keeps on walking.
That's
And
awesome.
Robert Kraft just said, like, "What do I do now?"
Because
What are you gonna do? Yeah, what are you gonna do? I mean, the dude was flanked by his security. What are you gonna do? Go grab him by the shoulder, and be like, "Hey, look here, MFer." I mean, you can get some polonium in your tea. However, the secret is too, like with a lot of those awards and stuff, you can always order a
did he get
replacement
back?
if you lose it. Actually, I don't think he did ever get it back. He had to buy a new one.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. As far as I knew, Putin was just like, "Yeah, it's mine now." Or they asked about it, he was just like, "Yeah, it's a nice ring." Yeah, you can look it up more if you would like. It's an interesting story. So, Robert Kraft, this was before he got his ring stolen by Putin, hired Pete Carroll. And the reason he wanted Pete Carroll is because, the 49ers in San Francisco had a winning culture. And, they had a really good setup there with the way everybody handled everything. And they wanted Pete Carroll to basically take that entire setup and bring it straight over to New England and just transplant everything there and be like, we're going to be the San Francisco 49ers of the East Coast. Pete was actually really excited about it. He's like, yeah, I love their philosophy there and I can integrate it with mine. And we're just going to change the way football's done. Unfortunately, he realized that when he got there, it was still basically all the old staff from the old regime, and a lot of those people weren't exactly down with his plans either. The big takeaway Pete had from this encounter was, if you're going to go to a new job like that and try to overhaul the culture, just replace everybody, which is something we'll actually do coming up.
I mean, that's pretty brutal, especially if people have been there for a while. But at the same time, it's like, if you're not just trying to fill in a role, but you're wanting to fundamentally change everything that's going on there, you kind of do need to get rid of. Even if people are like, "Oh no, I'll fall in line,"
they're still gonna have some baggage from the previous setup, and
I mean,
it's a tough pill to swallow. But you're right; it's kind of like burn it down to the ground and start over again. But yeah, that's something where it's just you wait to do that until everything's just so bad that nobody has any excuses. It's just like you're all horrible at your job, so I don't feel bad for firing you all.
Right.
But yep. So Pete learned from this job, if you're going to do a cultural overhaul, get rid of everyone and bring in your own people. So that's kind of like colonialism, if you think about it. 28 wins and 23 losses were Pete's record with the Patriots, and then he got canned after 3 years because 28 and 23, I mean, that's not an awful record, but it's not that great. And also, Pete, the quote-unquote winning traditions of the 49ers didn't really like transplant over because his staff was picky and finicky and wasn't necessarily working. So Pete's fired. It's the year 2000. He pretty much assumes that his football coaching career is over. So he starts looking at jobs in the media, sports broadcasters, analysts, pundits, this and that. Suddenly, one of his buddies calls him and goes, "I can get you an interview in North Carolina. You're a shoo-in for the job, Pete. Get on the plane and get out there right now." Pete's like, "Yay!" So he heads out there, and no, they don't give him the job.
They don't give it up.
They don't give him the job. No, they're like, nah. They said that he doesn't have enough experience in the college level, I guess. So then Pete goes back home, sits around by the phone for another month or so, gets another call. USC, or the University of Southern California, calls up. Famous college around down in California. They call up and they're like, "Hey, we need a new head coach. Come in and interview." And Pete went in there and he nailed the interview and got the job. And also, pro tip here from Pete Carroll. He says, if you're going in for an interview, and this is actually 100% true, I can back this up. He says, when you go in for an interview, only talk about positive things. Only say positive things about yourself, your previous employer, your worst enemy. Only say positive things, because interviewers hate negativity in an interview because they just assume you're going to drag that negativity with you to work.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, so if you're going to be in an interview, don't talk trash about anybody. Just bring up positive things.
Let me give you reading my tome of things I hated about my last employer.
Yeah. Well, that kind of happened to the job I'm at now. One of the guys, one of my coworkers, I guess, went to apply to the place one town over. And he went in there, and I guess the entire interview with him with the other place was just him trash talking the boss that he currently had and everybody he worked with and whatnot. Yeah, he didn't get the job.
Man, that's...
In fact, it was like so bad that the boss over there called up my boss and was like, "You won't believe the interview I just had with one of your dudes."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, yeah, that's especially around your
basically,
area. It's so small.
yes, exactly, small town.
It is a small town. Shelbyville's the same, but a lot of people live in Shelbyville, work in Louisville. So like in Louisville they call it a small big town because I mean you'd be surprised how many people know each other. So even still, like even
Yeah,
aside
because
of
you got
town,
generational
Louisville,
families there forever and ever. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, we
So
go back 42 generations.
even a place like Louisville, you don't necessarily want to be like talking shit,
Yeah,
especially if it's in the same industry because everyone is gonna find out about it.
yeah. Southern folks and gossip go together like Southern folks and sweet tea,
Right.
or Southern folks and meth.
Right. Yes, but I can't imagine the backlash that would happen, up there.
Yeah, yeah. So Pete Carroll gets the USC job. Fans, not really excited about it. Basically, they saw him as a failed NFL coach, and there was a lot of attitude of like, you can't just bring in an NFL attitude to the college level. It doesn't work. You've got to be like a college coach. Pro level stuff doesn't work out down here. But you know what? Turns out it did work for Pete. One thing he did is when he showed up to this job, he basically overhauled everybody, hired up the entire staff that he wanted and that he knew was going to work for him, got all the players that he wanted on the same level with him, and basically he wound up being there for from the 2001 season all the way through the 2009 season. And during his tenure, he became one of the winningest coaches in college at the time. He led them to a 97 win and 19 loss record, including a 34 game winning streak. He had a winning percentage of 83. Yeah, he won 83% of his games there. Won 7 bowl games and 2 national championships. Yeah, apparently his always compete philosophy works really well at the college level. So,
I mean,
and also too, once he started winning, naturally, all the fans loved him. Yep, fans loved him because
what are you? That's such a surprise.
Yeah, everybody was like really skeptical on him. As soon as he started winning, they were like, "We love Pete Carroll."
Man, I tell you, the University of Kentucky up here. No, sorry, not University. That's a different one. Kentucky State University. No, it is UK. Sorry, the other way. Because there's one's a smaller college in Frankfurt that's a black college, and the other one's the big. So it's UK. So it's University in Kentucky. That is like a massive college town. I mean, it's like everyone wears blue, Wildcats, blah blah blah. I mean, it's the whole state. Then you have UK. Sorry, U of L. They have their college too, and they're just mainly just Louisville. I mean, it is huge. Kentucky doesn't really have any professional teams of any. They don't have football or basketball, so it is all college.
So college sports is life down there.
Oh my god, dude! And so there was.
Don't you guys have like a college basketball program or something that everybody loves down there? Like beyond words.
Yep. And and so one of those, as actually the basketball team, it was happened a few coaches ago, but they weren't doing too well, and people would go to his house and they would put for sale signs in his yard.
Yes, I mean, wow, that's real mature people.
It is. I mean, brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never want to be. And there was with few people I know, Rick Pitino. He was the college coach for.
Oh, I recognize that name.
Yeah, because he was big. He was a big controversy because he was originally UK, and then he left, but then came back and started U of L, and a lot of people were like really, really pissed. Like the UK people were calling him a traitor, and U of L people didn't like him because he used to be UK, and it was so funny too. He actually ended up leaving for a while for a medical condition. I'm quoting medical condition. Because he was like, oh, it was something to do with his. I can't remember what they said it was, but it was STD. I mean, because he was like, and he was got in trouble for like I think basically getting his players like hookers, and he was having an affair with someone. It was a whole thing. Like but I can totally.
So that goes with the hooker comment you made earlier about, hey, get him a hooker.
Yeah,
I had a feeling there was some basis in reality on that.
Yeah, so basically, I'll just go ahead and say I completely understand the college mentality behind if you start winning, then you're loved.
Yep, then you are a god among men, and you could literally murder somebody in the middle of that college campus, and everybody like, I didn't see nothing.
Yep, pretty much.
You can get away with anything, and if it's one of those storied colleges too, you can make so much money being a coach. We'll actually get into that a little bit in a moment. But Pete Carroll's philosophy was a smash hit at USC. His idea of helping his players fulfill their pyramid of needs turned out to work out really, really well. Instead of just hammering players over and over again about doing drills and this and that, he would actually crowdsource opinions from players, be like, hey, how do you think we as coaches could do better? Which is kind of unheard of in the sports world. Most people, it's like, hey, you're the player, I'm the coach. You do exactly what I say. And one thing about Pete too is part of the he turned out to be a really good recruiter too, because he was so personable and he was into sports psychology. So, a lot of times when you go around recruiting, the coach will just be like, "You run real fast. We like that." And they would just talk about nothing but football, the X's and O's and this and that. But Pete, he would actually like to get more into the mind and spirit of the players that he was interviewing. Talk to them about, sports, of course, naturally, but he'd also learn about their family, what kind of music they like, what kind of arts they're into. He would really get down to the nitty gritty of them. And that would actually help him kind of get out the most about his players, learning everything that he could about their heritage, this and that.
He's walking up to him, put his hand in his face, and like Quato's like, open your mind.
Yes. Actually, I was thinking he's almost kind of like Grand Admiral Thrawn, where, he doesn't just look at the X's O, he actually studies his opponent or his players.
Right.
Yep.
He looks up some art they did, like, here, draw something, and now I know your whole soul.
Yeah, essentially, he's like, what kind of music you like? All right, I know what kind of person you are.
Well, what was that? Oh, man, you're a piece of shit, ain't you?
Ha! I read a
Kid
funny
Rock's
interview.
my favorite. Oh,
Ha!
Get out of my house.
There was an interview I was reading. I didn't put this script. I'm glad you brought that up. But somebody was interviewing Pete, and they're like, "Oh, what kind of music do you like, Pete?" And he's like, "Oh, I listen to all sorts of stuff, classical, rock, this and that." And they're like, "Do you listen to country, Pete?" And he's like, "Oh God, no." He's like, "No, I'll listen to almost everything, but I'm not listening to country." One thing Pete talked about, there was a slight challenge that USC has that other colleges don't, is they got down the road from them the land of temptation known as Hollywood. And like you said, probably the aforementioned hookers and everything. Apparently, Pete made it a point to warn the players, hey, if you go to Hollywood, don't do anything stupid that makes the team look bad or we'll kick you off. Because, apparently it was, go down to Hollywood, get drunk, do dumb things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know how college kids can be.
Mm-hmm.
And also adults, high school kids, everybody in between. And one thing Pete talked about, too, that was kind of interesting, I've heard this before, was college kids kind of have an interesting situation sometimes they get put into, like where they almost get their entire life destroyed in front of them. And the example, I've heard this a few times from different coaches and stuff. Let's say you, Nate, you are from, I don't know, Snugapoog, Wisconsin, and you are like literally the greatest football player that Snugapoog has ever seen. Like 100%. Everybody, they talk about you set all the school records, like by a wide margin. You're one of the best players in the state. Everybody talks about how, ooh, you're going to put Snugapoog on the map. You're going to be the greatest football player in the history of the NFL, so on and so forth. And then, it's like, hey, all right, come down to USC, try out for this college team. And then you go from being like the greatest player ever in Snugapoog history to being like the fourth best player in your position on that team. Apparently that can really crush somebody. When also you go from being like, I'm the greatest player in the world to being like, oh, wow, I'm just not very good overall.
Yeah, I could see how that would definitely mess with someone's head.
Yeah,
going from like I don't know, Gaston to I don't know.
I'll say you're just like
Marty McFly.
Yeah, you're literally just like leagues above everybody else at your school and just so much better. And then all of a sudden you just go line up in practice and somebody just runs by you like you're standing still. And it's like, oh, and you wind up not even making the team kind of thing. Then you got to go back to Snugapoog with your hat in hand and be like, well, that didn't work out very well. And then you go
that would suck.
Yeah, then you got to go work at the foundry and develop an addiction, and and the circle continues.
That's
you have to. It's part of the thing. Once you collapse as a college player, you go back to your hometown. They hand you a card. It's just like, all right, here's an alcohol brand that we've chosen for you. It's Schmidt Ice, and here you go. We're also giving you a slight pain pill addiction. Have fun. But so that's something that Pete's talked about having to deal with every once in a while. It's just like, oh, this poor kid just got destroyed, and his life will never be the same. So anyways, there's a fun thing to put yourself in empathize yourself with. Well, I don't know, fun's the right
Kill
word,
the kids.
but also when
he looks like he's not doing well.
Yeah. Cull the weak. We only have enough supplies for the strong.
Oh, we'll just take him. Yeah, take him out back. Like, look at the flowers. Look at the pretty flowers.
Tell me about the rabbits, Lenny.
Why am I standing over a pit? Don't ask me.
Well, Pete was coaching at USC. He had a tendency of going for risky plays and trick plays, making the big plays that nobody else would think about making at the time. And he actually got the nickname Big Balls Pete out of the deal on this, to the point the crowd would actually chant Big Balls Pete sometimes during the game. I found that kind of amusing.
I mean, what kind of trick is he talking about, like hiding the ball in their shirt? Like, I got it.
Like fake punts, fake field goals, going in for it on fourth down and this and that, which are terms that really don't make much sense if you don't watch a lot of football.
Yeah.
Yeah, flea flickers. Sometimes, do stuff like magic trick, they pull out a wand and do it over the ball and go poof, disappear, and the ref would find it under his hat. I made that part up.
Yeah, I was like, what? Well, my mind immediately went to like the Globetrotters. You know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know they're not football, but you know, you get that.
Yeah, it was still the same thing. Them and the
Yeah.
Washington Generals.
Yeah, through the football, but there's a string attached. They pull it back.
Yeah, right. Woohoo! Yep. We
So I just think it was like the Washington Generals. Like it's so funny that the idea of this team, they just never win. Just like one day, also I'm like, I'm sick of losing. I'm going for it today. I'm a win.
It's like the that Simpsons where Krusty's like bets on the Washington Generals. He's like, I could have sworn they were down for a win. I remember watching them when I was a real little kid and asked my mom, I was like, wow, they seem really good. Why don't they play in the NBA? And she was like, because they're so good, they can't play in the NBA. They would just win every game. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Keep in mind, I was like really small at the time. It's like,
Right,
Globetrotters, you know, back when they're on Scooby-Doo all the time and stuff.
Like, yeah, sure, whatever.
I have heard they are kind of a fun thing to watch live. But
oh yeah, it looks really entertaining. They're definitely doing like magic with those balls.
But I, right in front of the kids too.
Right.
I did hear on the radio, one of the guys, this was years and years ago, but he went to a Globetrotters game and he said it was a lot of fun. But at one point they did kind of this skit where they pulled a kid out from the crowd and they like gathered around him. They're like doing this comedy bit with him. But they surrounded the kid. And when they unsurrounded him, they had like taken his shirt off. The kid was kind of chubby, and you could see this kid was just like mortified over what happened. Yeah, because one of those things. Hey, this will be funny. Yeah, but the kid was like, "Oh God, they're seeing my nipples. They're using their ball magic. They're using their ball magic on me.
That evil ball magic."
Yep. So 9 years of rampant winning has gone on at USC, and everybody loves Pete Carroll. He is a legend down there. But it's January 11th, 2010, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Pete Carroll announces, I'm going to the Seattle Seahawks, the team that I root for. Pete said that Pete had basically said, I have accomplished all I can in college football, and now I want to take my philosophy to the NFL and show it can work there.
Thanks for all you've done for me. Now, fuck you guys. I'm moving up.
Yep, basically.
Moving on up.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact, too. Pete Carroll's at USC. In the 9 years he was there, he only lost one game in the month of November. 25-1 in the month of November.
That's the month of November, but all the rest of the months he did terrible. But November he was like, on point.
Well, I mean, he did win 83% of his games, so.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so boo, your joke failed. Also, when he started out as coach at USC, he was earning a cool $1 million. By the time he left, he was making over $4 million. Not a bad raise though over that time.
No, I mean not hell.
$500,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty effing good.
Oh yeah, one thing too that Pete Carroll did that was kind of cool is every day while he was there at USC, he bought breakfast for his staff every morning. Cost him about $25,000 a year, he said.
Way.
Yeah, I know that was my thought too. It's like everybody's like, it's cost me $25,000 a year. Can you believe that? I was like, yeah, kind of, but when you're making $5 million a year, it's kind of hard to,
right.
$4 million. So Pete, such a legend down there. Everybody loved him. Why would you leave USC? Was it just for the fame of the NFL, chasing glory and such? Possibly. But also, too, right after Pete Carroll left, the USC football scandal erupts. Yep. Like, as soon as he leaves, all of a sudden, like, the hammer came down, and they're like, hey, we've been investigating USC for a little bit, and we've got some stories to tell. So what happened was, basically, I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. I think they've changed the rules since then, but back then, in order to play in college, you had to be a literal amateur, meaning you couldn't make one penny or anything or get any kickbacks or whatever off the sports. It was considered verboten. And, you'd basically be kicked off the team or kicked out of the league, whatever, yada, yada, yada. So, enter this one player named Reggie Bush. And he, one of USC's most famous players ever. Apparently, I'd never watched him, but he's supposed to be one of the most exciting players to ever watch in football during college years. So, apparently, Reggie Bush, big hero down there, had a good story where, like, he came from a poor town, a single mom, this and that. So apparently at one point during his college tenure, some managers or agents decided to hook up Reggie Bush's mom with a hotel or a apartment nearby. And they're like, hey, we're going to fly you out here, set you up in an apartment. And that way you can come by and watch your son play the games and whatnot, feel good story kind of thing. Well, since old Reggie would occasionally stay at his mom's place, that's was considered a gift in the eyes of the NCAA. And another thing that he got busted for, I guess when he went to go get his Heisman Award, because he won a Heisman Award, which is basically the best player in college. He was so broke that, because he couldn't have a job, he couldn't afford a suit. So somebody bought him a suit and even bought him a limo ride to the Heisman Award ceremony. This was also considered taking a payout. So he had to actually forfeit that best player in the college trophy because of all this.
Crap.
Yeah, kind of BS if you think about it. All he got out of it was a suit, and his mom got an apartment that he stayed at a few nights out of the year. But because of this, USC was placed on 4 years probation. And among the penalties, they were forced to vacate 14 wins while Reggie Bush was a player, including its national championship win and a Orange Bowl win. And they got a 2-year postseason ban for the program, meaning they couldn't play any bowl games or win any championships. And they had to surrender 30 scholarships over a 3-year span. So basically, they got hobbled right after Pete left. Pete Carroll denies any knowledge of all this rule breaking going on, which that's probably BS. I'm sure he did know. But
Yeah.
here's the secret, though. All the college teams do this.
Yeah.
Any college team has gotten busted for doing this. University of Washington Huskies got busted for this, too. The team down the road from me. Yeah, even your University of Kansas. I'm sure they've gotten busted plenty of times for violations. University of Louisville.
Yeah.
But what's the other one? UK?
Yeah, UK, I'm sure there's been scandals, but most recently U of L had just like it was a torrent of scandals all at once. It was apparently in this world of sports, it was actually a pretty big deal to the point like U of L was actually at risk of losing its credentialing. You know, yeah, it was it was at risk of becoming not a school anymore. So it got pretty bad.
And the way this always works out, feels like every college in the world does this, and everybody's okay with it right up until one person gets cheesed off at the school and decides to blow the whistle. Well, it seems like it just goes back to work back. Well, fine, I'm just going to go to the press or whatever. But right until then, they're fine with it. So, yep, the hammer comes down. USC gets burned real bad. Poor Reggie Bush, you know. Oh, yeah. Also, too, even the legendary Lou Holtz, the coach we talked about earlier, he actually had a admission scandal just like the one Pete Carroll went through. But also, since Pete Carroll got out of Dodge in time, nothing happened to him. Which also makes it slightly a little more suspicious.
He wasn't here when the cops came in, so
yeah, exactly. He saw the sirens down the road or the lights down the road from the cops. He's like, "Well, I'm gonna hit the old dusty trail, guys. Bye. Don't you want to leave the front door? Nope. I'm gonna hop over this fence out back and run through some other people's yards." Some of the USC people definitely felt betrayed and wanted Pete Carroll said they're like, "You left us. You did all this to us. You ruined our program." You know, the same people loved him 10 minutes ago.
Oh, of course. Again, as long as you're winning.
However, the majority of USC fans still love Pete Carroll and consider him the greatest coach of all time there. Because they have the same attitude I do, where it's like every college cheats. It's just not all of them get busted. Thanks to my coworker, Kevin Anderson, for answering some questions about USC and Pete Carroll. Hi, Kevin. The scandal erupts down there, but in the meantime, Pete is up here in Seattle being announced as the new Seahawks head coach. 5 years and $33 million for that. That's not bad. He also got full power of hiring the staff and hiring and firing of players and staff, which is a power very few NFL coaches have ever gotten. I believe Bill Belichick at the Patriots was the only other guy who's gotten that at that time.
Oh, are they not allowed to like hire their own staff?
Usually what it is the head coach doesn't do the hiring and firing. It's the general manager who is in charge of that. They're the numbers guy and they're the hire and firer. And usually they work hand in hand with the coach, but typically the general manager has final say in everything. Because also basically what it is the owner can like step in and talk to the general manager and be like, I know you and the coach are doing this, but I'm going to override it and so on. But
I would assume the owner had final say. I mean, that's
for the most part, a lot of owners actually just stay the hell out of the office, though. They're kind of smart in that regard. They just keep writing the checks.
Yeah.
But anyway, Pete is given ultimate power, and boy, howdy, did he use that power. 200 roster moves in the first year alone. 200 players hired or fired, and 200 coaches hired or fired. But Seahawks kind of need it. We're on a downswing then. It had been a while since we had done anything, a few years. I do remember, too, because I was a delivery driver at the time, so I listened to a lot of sports talk radio. And a lot of Seahawks fans were not exactly excited about Pete Carroll. A lot of people were screaming that he uses college coaching philosophy. You can't use a college coaching philosophy in the NFL. It won't work. If that sounds familiar from the other times he did it. Yeah.
People will never learn.
Yeah, no, they will never learn. So, although that whole, the college level rah-rah attitude doesn't work at the pro level, there is a little bit of credence to that because I had heard in interviews like when you're like a young rookie or in your first few years in the NFL, Pete Carroll, you hear his speech and you're like, yeah, that's awesome. We can change the world. We can do it all. But by the time you're like an embittered 32-year-old dude and your knees hurt, you're kind of like, all right, sure, buddy. So, which also that kind of backs up the fact it feels like Pete Carroll's always had his best teams when they're like the youngest teams that he had.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that. I hate motivational stuff. I mean, I have a loathing for it. I mean, there was some meeting I went to. I think it was when I was manager at GameStop, and they had like a whole region come, and when the HR guys came up, and he started playing this video, and it was like inspirational music in the background, and it was like kids running
Huh.
through a field playing soccer, and like
Huh.
they're black and white pictures of like, oh, there's a couple, and they're like, you know,
It's
hang
felt
in
like an
there,
Enya
buddy.
music video,
Oh
basically.
my god, yes, and they're like, oh, live your dreams and you follow the course. I'm like, oh my god, I'm dying, killing me. My
Yeah.
soul is being
I had to
crushed.
go to something kind of like that. He didn't have a presentation with music and stuff, just a speech, but the dude said paradigm shift. So many times people were laughing audibly by the end of it. Like, I've never heard the word paradigm used so much in a speech. It was bad. The paradigm shift of this paradigm is what the paradigm is going to be. It was, I don't know. It almost sounded like it was a joke in a way.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't know what you
It's like,
intended, but you
yeah.
failed.
Yep, your word of the day calendar said paradigm, and you're just running with that. Or maybe he's competing with himself. See how many times he can say paradigm in his speech, and then try to beat that record. Maybe he learned that from Jerry Rice.
Or it's like that one movie. Oh man, Evangelical. Steve Martin.
G- the jerk.
No, Steve Martin was like an evangelical guy. He was a shyster, and
Oh, yeah, I don't know the name of that. Yeah, I
he
saw it
come
once
in,
a long, long time ago, but and then that was
he came in and he was like he would actually work in people place bets like, oh, can you slip this in there, and he would do it.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. My dad hated Steve Martin, so I've seen very few Steve Martin.
Leap of faith.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, you can bring up a lot of stuff about Steve Martin. I'll just be like, oh. Also, shortly after Pete got hired at the Seahawks, he came out with a book that we sourced for this entire podcast. Win forever, live, work, and play like a champion. 4.5 stars with 800 or 786 reviews on Amazon. No sales figures for that book, by the way. But that's basically where all the info for this came from, along with some interviews and this and that and some other reading. And this book was obviously written while you're still at USC because basically they have an epilogue at the end that's just like, hey, I'm going to the Seahawks. Ain't that neat? And that was the end of it. So Pete gets to the Seahawks, and even though some people didn't want him there, turns out he becomes easily the greatest coach the Seahawks have ever seen, giving us such fun things as like the Legion of Boom, which was one of the best defenses of all time in football. And he also brought in Skittles and marijuana aficionado Marshawn Lynch, and also who gave us the Beast Quake, which was when the crowd got so loud it actually set off a seismic detector in Seattle, which was kind of cool.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and Carroll is also the guy who took a chance on who was actually kind of an unpopular draft pick at the time, Mr. Ciara, aka Russell Wilson. So 13 years with the Seahawks, and Pete Carroll gets 117 wins and 78 losses. That's including the playoffs. He won us our only Super Bowl in 2013. And with that Super Bowl win, Pete Carroll becomes a very exclusive member of a very exclusive club. He becomes only one of 3 coaches to ever win a national championship in college and a Super Bowl in the NFL. Only
Nice.
Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer have ever pulled that off before. And technically, Barry Switzer kind of just inherited the same team that Jimmy Johnson won the Super Bowl with. So you could almost say that Jimmy Johnson was kind of the only other person who really did it.
If
Yeah,
he wrote the
Barry.
book, you suck. Your dreams are stupid.
Yes, exactly. Pete also took us to a second Super Bowl in 2014, and that season had the infamous, hey, we're not going to run the ball. We're just going to pass it, which you see memes. Every time somebody brings up Pete Carroll, somebody will post a meme about that, being like, oh, hey, I could hand you your coffee, or I could just step back 2 feet and throw it at you. It was one of those plays that everybody's very emotional after it happened because it just felt right to have run the ball and got us the touchdown, but it wasn't a guaranteed play either way. So after a while, I cooled down. I was like, well, it wasn't that dumb, but some people still call it the stupidest play of all time. Also, too, it's kind of unconfirmed, but some of the players on that team were actually saying that Russell Wilson, the quarterback, actually changed the play at the last minute, and it was all on him. Pete Carroll has neither confirmed nor denied that. Also, during his time with the Seahawks, Pete Carroll became known for chewing bubblegum on the game all game long on the sidelines. He's always got a piece of gum in his mouth, just always chewing away. In case you ever wondered, it's bubble yum he chews, original flavor, and he goes through about 15 pieces a game. Average game is about 3 hours, so he goes through about a piece every 12 minutes. So there you go, math. That's a lot of gum, actually, if you think about it.
It's like I don't know. It hurts my jaw after a while.
Yeah, me
Once
too.
upon a time I could do it, but now it's like, ugh, I don't like it.
Yeah, and also too, it's just sugar
Yeah.
goo. However, despite Pete being popular here and most people loving him, he still has some haters. But this last season was Pete Carroll's final year as Seahawks head coach. So at first it was kind of like at the end of the season, they got revealed as like, hey, Pete Carroll is no longer the coach of the Seahawks, but he's got offered a executive position, as a higher up as what's the advisory board commission kind of thing,
Yeah.
an advisory role. And everybody's like, well, that seems kind of sudden. Well, they just out of the clear blue, because we didn't make the playoffs, but it's not like we were a horrible team this last year. I mean, yeah. But as time went on, it turns out that at the beginning of the season, Pete went up to the higher ups and he was like, I'm going to retire at the end of this year. But they didn't make a statement about it or anything because, it just kind of affects the season a little bit and affects the players if you know
Right.
coaches last season. So they kept it under wraps. But, the ownerships were like, all right, we'll start putting, the wheels in motion to replace it at the end of the year. But then, like, at the very end of the year, Pete Carroll, like, went to the owners like, I changed my mind. I want to stay with the team. Please let me stay with the team. But as you know, once you kind of like start putting the wheels in motion on these sort of things, you can't really just go back on it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Pete. I know you would like to stay, but once you tell them you're going to retire, they kind of need to start doing things that, you can't really go back on.
Right. All right.
So Pete Carroll said he was going to retire, decided last minute not to, which ironically enough, I don't know if ironically is the right term, but that same thing actually happened with our last Super Bowl winning coach, Mike Holmgren. He literally was like, well, this will be my last year. Whatever happens, happens. And then at the end of the season, he was like, I kind of want to stay around, guys. But nope, same thing with him. They're like, we already put the wheels in motion. Then they replaced him. And then that guy's replacement was actually Pete Carroll. So that whole thing didn't happen that long ago either.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you're welcome to stay, but once you put those wheels in motion, you can't go back.
Yep,
So-
exactly. And also, too, Pete Carroll decided he didn't want to take that advisory job and he's just going to go do his own thing because I think he's kind of aware of the fact that, it just wouldn't be that great having him around because the whole, you want a whole regime change because that's actually what the Seahawks are kind of doing now. They're sort of like turning over their entire coaching staff for the most part.
Oh,
We actually just hired our new coach and he's the youngest coach in the NFL right now at 36 years old. Pete Carroll, when he left, the oldest coach in the NFL at 72. So we literally replaced the oldest coach in the NFL with the youngest one in the NFL. Kind of cool, I think. Depends on how good the coach does, but
Right.
that was one. Yeah, that was one problem with Pete Carroll that people were talking about. Is the dude's in great shape. He's probably in better shape than we are overall for being 72. But hey, he is getting up there in kind of years, and it was kind of getting to the point where it's like, maybe it's time to look for his replacement because you never know. He might have a stroke on the can one of these days. Then where will we be, Nate?
What would become of our world?
Yep. So, as of what Pete's going to do next, well, only Pete truly knows. The sports pundits are guessing anything and everything for Pete, as is tradition. My guess? Well, I'm going to guess that Pete will decide that he has learned and done all he can with the game of football, and he's going to retire to a tiny island with a single house on it. A talking turtle will be his only friend, and there he will train anyone pure of heart who comes to him seeking knowledge in the way of football, and he will help them fill their pyramid power and let them go Super Saiyan.
But they must bring hookers.
Yeah, yeah. I figure Pete Carroll living out his Master Roshi would be kind of,
Well, yeah, Master Roshi was a dirty man.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Man.
Yep.
Dirty man.
So, what we can say, the end result on this podcast, if you learn anything about Pete Carroll, is he lives on Tiny Island and he's really into panty. So,
Damn straight he is.
And
blood shoots out of his nose.
Yeah. What's this in my email? A cease and desist. So, that's the story of Pete Carroll, going from the man with the most competitive berth in the world all the way up to retiring as a Seahawks head coach, bringing us a Super Bowl and tons of good memories. He is also, one of the first players to actually, one of the things he actually did as coach, I'm surprised he didn't write that down. When he was at USC, he actually opened practices to the public, which was kind of cool because, fans could go and watch the players work out and see kind of behind the scenes. It got the players some good exposure to, having like real feedback, but also, I guess USC alumni Will Ferrell would often show up at the practices and start messing around and putting on like comedy routines and stuff with the players as a good stress release. Yep.
That's good.
So you can sit there and be watching practices, all your players. All of a sudden, Will Ferrell would just show up and start playing with them, doing jokes and stuff, which would be pretty cool. So now,
Will Ferrell, we're trying to be serious.
Yeah. Never. So there we go. Nate, have you learned anything about Pete Carroll and all the cities that he's been to?
Yes, he's been in too many cities.
Yeah, too many cities. Yeah. He is spreading like a disease everywhere. He is a virus. Petus Carolitis. That sounds like a virus name, right?
Yes.
This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.